Gildan Audio presents an unabridged recording of China's Second Continent, How a Million Migrants Are Building a New Empire in Africa, by Howard W. French, narrated by Don Hagen. Introduction. When China launched its historic opening toward the end of the 1970s, the country and its people not only became the fortunate beneficiaries of astute new policies, but also, crucially, of magnificent timing. The next few years, as they unfolded, would take shape as an era of unprecedented globalization, and no country would profit more from the coming tidal wave of economic change. In little more than a decade, China went from being a poor society with an economy that produced few goods for export and imported little, to positioning itself to become the so-called factory of the world, as we recognize it today. As great as this era of change proved to be for China and for the Chinese, though, globalization was essentially being carried out on other people's terms, namely those of the United States, Western Europe, and Japan. The economic powerhouses of the rich world sought new outlets for their surplus capital, as well as low-wage labor for their enterprises, allowing them to ply eager Western consumers with ever-cheaper goods. And for both of these purposes, China fit the bill better than any place else on earth. Modern globalization's first great wave is now crested and is being overtaken by a newer and potentially even more consequential tide. In this new phase, China has gone from being a vessel to becoming an increasingly transformative actor in its own right. Indeed, it is rapidly emerging as the most important agent of economic change in broad swaths of the world. Chinese banks, construction companies, and other enterprises in ever-growing variety conspicuously roam the planet nowadays in search of outlets for their money and goods, for business and markets, and for the raw materials needed to sustain China's rapid growth. As they do so, China is increasingly writing its own rules and reinventing globalization in its own image, gradually jettisoning many of the norms and conventions used by the United States and Europe throughout their long and hitherto largely unchallenged tutelage of the Third World. Beijing has achieved this in part by engineering a kind of modern-day barter system in which developing countries pay for new railroads, highways, and airports through the guaranteed long-term supply of hydrocarbons or minerals.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?